Disney has been the home of many nostalgic creatures that have been a part of growing up. The filmmaker had to go through several hardships before eventually succeeding. How did Disney start making its films? What was Disney's best year for filming? Stay tuned to find out all the important, unanswered questions we need answered about Disney's animation styles. First up, how did Disney work with pen and paper? You might be curious as to how Disney began making movies. Given the lack of technology available to them at the time, the Walt Disney Studios employed an avant-garde animation technique in the 1930s. It was then a very smart way to create animation. Considering the lack of devices and technology, artists inked celluloid sheets or cells and then positioned these cells over the painted backdrops. This method improved production efficiency while also changing the way animated movies looked. To minimize the number of reproductions required to create an animation, characters were produced on cells and placed on a fixed background image. The final Disney feature picture to employ this hand-drawn style of animation was The Little Mermaid. According to Roy O. Disney, in 1927, Walt Disney was motivated to produce a sound cartoon after seeing The Jazz Singer. With Walt's imagination and creativity, Disney was set to thrive. Next up, what was Disney's animation like from the 1920s to the 40s? Alice's Day at Sea, the first Alice comedy, was released by Disney on March 1, 1924. 15 additional Alice comedies, including Alice the Toreador, Alice Gets Stung, and Alice Solves a Puzzle, will be produced by the Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio in the upcoming year. Walt Disney decided to switch to an all-cartoon series after spending 4 years producing his Alice comedies. Disney's great smash from 1928 was Steamboat Willie. To replace Oswald, Walt Disney came up with a suggestion for a brand new character. He created Mickey Mouse, the most iconic and beloved figure we have, who went on to become Disney's first cartoon celebrity. Disney had a fantastic year in 1934. Walt starts making a feature-length movie after being persuaded to do so by the popularity of the Mickey Mouse cartoons. This project was 400% over budget and required more than 300 animators, artists, and assistants. The pioneering Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs would be the result in 1939. Next off, how did Disney improve in the 1950s? After a few short movies in the 1940s, Walt decided that it would be wise for the company to resume production on a feature-length tale. The shorts were financially successful, and they grew quite a fan group for Disney. A fairy tale similar to Snow White seemed most fitting at the moment, so they decided on Cinderella as the next movie, even though there was a real production race between animation companies. You probably already know that the fairy tale, based on a story by Charles Perrault, is called Cinderella. The movie Cinderella debuted on February 15, 1950. It was a huge box office success, but there was more to it. Clothing and doll sales contributed to the success of the film. The 75-minute version of Lewis Carroll's Alice Through the Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland. Over 15 years were spent on the development of this project. One of the most vivid and colorful movies from the classic Disney era is Alice in Wonderland. As a result, the animation is perfect for the narrative. You must have heard of Peter Pan, the first comprehensive story by Disney since the 1950s. In other words, Peter Pan is the first movie with a finished plot and fully realized characters from start to finish. Not a single minute of the 77-minute movie was wasted. Overall, the 1950s were a huge success for Disney, and they gave way to some of the most OG Disney characters. Next up, what changes did Disney implement from the 1960s to the 1980s? Disney may have been at its best between Cinderella in the 1950s and The Jungle Book in 1967. The 101 Dalmatian multiplane camera was made possible thanks in large part to the efficiency and effectiveness of the technology, which improved throughout the 1960s. Disney Animation made an effort to visually and emotionally animate cartoons that felt authentic, had depth, and substance. The Silver Age, also referred to as the Restoration Age, saw Disney return to producing high-end feature-length movies. Beautiful animation with elaborate backgrounds and delicate colors characterized this period. These movies have an otherworldly atmosphere that makes even everyday scenes appear magical. The Disney Studios descended into the Bronze Age after Walt Disney's passing. The modern era, as it's also known, was a period of decline for Disney. Without Walt's direction and creativity, Disney Studios went through a period of bland films. Throughout this time, hand-inked films were being replaced by xerography. Animators could print their illustrations directly onto cells, saving time and money. However, this method did have its limitations, which made it difficult to attract viewers. At first, it could only produce black lines. These movies lacked the grandeur and scope of earlier Disney productions, and the era had an introverted vibe. Movies from this era did not leave a lasting impression on audiences because they did not explore larger themes, as well as other Disney movies. The only exception to this rule is Winnie the Pooh. So how did Disney make changes in the 1990s 1990s and 2000s. The Disney Renaissance is regarded as the apex of Disney filmmaking and may be the period on which most people agree. With its films returning to the musical fairy tale storytelling that Disney was known for, it enjoyed tremendous success at the box office. Disney has made the best zero-graphic achievement with The Little Mermaid. Additionally, it was the first Disney fairy tale film in nearly 20 years. These were also the first movies on which Howard Ashman and Alan Menken collaborated. Both would go on to become musical powerhouses for Disney and key figures in the company's creative success. What characterizes this period is Disney Studios' search for a fresh storytelling approach similar to Pixar's. Except for Lilo and Stitch, movies at this time weren't particularly successful at the box office or well-liked. Animation films had a great decade in the 2000s. It witnessed the transition from hand-drawn animation to computer-generated animation. It was also a time when numerous excellent films from rival companies threatened Disney's dominance as the finest in the category. Some of the most popular movies came out in this era with advanced sound and animation. The Little Mermaid in 1989, Beauty and the Beast in 1991, Aladdin came out in 1992, and The Lion King in 1994, along with some other treasures. Next up, how did Disney animate from the 2010s to the present? The revival era, sometimes known as the Second Disney Renaissance, is the period in which Disney movies are now being produced. The puzzle pieces started coming together once more, with John Lasseter taking the head of the animation group in 2006 and Disney's eventual acquisition of Pixar. The 2009 release of The Princess and the Frog was acclaimed for its return to the original Disney animation, while also generating $270 million worldwide. With their upcoming movie Tangled, Disney decided to give a shot at CGI animation yet again. Disney and the fans understood that they were once again in the middle of a great era with the release of Tangled. Afterwards, with the release of Frozen, the all-time highest-grossing animated movie, the revival era rose to new heights. They made a lot of progress from Frozen to Frozen 2. Disney created high-quality scripts and animated the characters on PCs. A new software named Beast allowed them to create better-looking and more movable hair. The clothing design in general was more advanced. In Elsa's clothes, you can see every single stitch and tiny gems. Getting an animated character to move is all about control. From the 1920s and the 2020s, we can see that movement has significantly improved. The animators utilize clothes and hair as personality traits and give depth to character. Next off, what was the last pen and paper animated movie? Disney's Oliver and Company, which was released in 1988, was the company's final entirely hand-drawn animated film. Following that film, work on the CAP system began. The Little Mermaid debuted the CAP system after Oliver and Company were released. The Little Mermaid was produced using a hybrid style, while The Rescuers Down Under, which was released in 1990, was the first film to be produced entirely digitally and in caps. Since then, every movie has been made produced on computers using conventional animation methods. The final caps-produced films were Treasure Planet 2002 and Treasure Planet 2004. Pen and paper were still used up until this period, but computers were used for the majority of the manufacturing. The Princess and the Frog, released in 2009, and Winnie the Pooh in 2011, were both produced entirely digitally and without the use of any paper. By the time Disney transitioned to the Toon Boom Harmony in 2007 for how to hook up your home theater, even though some fans anticipated more movies using pen and paper, most preferred the new style of animation, which led Disney to completely abandon it. But this is not the only reason. The digital way is so much easier than taking 1,000 shots of paper. Disney has become a great source of children's entertainment, thanks to Walt and his team. And there you have it. Everything you need to know about some of the juiciest and most interesting unanswered questions we need answered regarding Disney. Do you think Disney should go back to pen and paper? Which style of animation is your favorite? Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. And thanks for watching.